What's the scariest space fact or mystery in your opinion? From r/AskReddit. What's the scariest space or fact mystery in your opinion? Hey guys, it's Em. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Story 1. The sheer distance between things, it's scary and somewhat depressing. Here's 2 comments from underneath. It often blows my mind when I look up at 2 stars that look super close together and realize they are probably just as far apart from each other as they are to us. When you look up at the night sky in any urban areas or those with sufficient light pollution, the stars you see, think the constellations and other bright stars, with the exception of these super bright blue A-type stars, are usually no further than 500 light years away. The biggest, brightest, non-A-type star in our typical night sky is also one of the biggest discovered in our galaxy, Betelgeuse. At 541 light years from Earth, it is still the furthest star in the Orion constellation. Those A-types I mentioned can be seen to about 2,000 light years away. Our galaxy is between 70,000 main core of stars in the limbs, and 150,000, the outliers before you get to the clouds. Other galactic remnants from old collisions, light years across. Only seeing those stars that are 500 light years in radius gives us less than 1% of our galaxy to light up our night. Space is unimaginably huge. Look, I am a big believer in aliens. Maybe not necessarily the little green guys, but I do believe that we are not alone in the galaxy. Maybe this universe, but there's no way there's nothing else out there. Story 2. Astronomers here. There are a lot of things posted here that are not really likely to happen anytime soon or affect your life on Earth much. So if you want something to worry about, may I introduce you to the Carrington event of 1859. Basically, Carrington was a scientist who noticed a flash from a huge cluster of sunspots, which was the biggest coronal mass ejection from the sun ever recorded, aka a ton of material ejected from the sun at high speeds. It hit Earth within a day. Auroras were seen as far as south as Hawaii. Wires on telephone poles burst into flame, and telegraph operators even reported contacting each other when not connected. If a similar event were to strike Earth today, it would cause billions of dollars in damage. Blown transformers are super hard to replace, and a lot of satellites wouldn't be able to handle it. And it goes without saying you'd have a serious radio blackout for a bit until it ended on a ton of essential frequencies. The crazy thing about the Carrington event, though, is we really have no idea how often such events happen. But we do know that in 2012, there was a Carrington-level solar flare that barely missed Earth. Great. Can't wait to think about that the rest of this week. I'm a child of the digital age, so this idea that we would be disconnected from each other is honestly pretty freaky to me. Story 3. Vacuum decay is one of the scariest concepts to me. We don't know if it exists, and we won't know until it's too late. Here's a couple comments underneath asking Opie some questions. On the other hand, you'll never know. You'll just blink out of existence one day, so nothing to worry about. Either way, nothing really matters. Agree. Kurzagiskat, again, sorry about pronunciation, made a nice video explaining vacuum decay. This one definitely takes the cake right besides gamma ray burst. At least the speed of light offers us some protection, assuming the space-time fabric holds and the vacuum decay starts somewhere very far away. It's nice how the universe reminds us how insignificant and temporary we might be. Carl Sagan was right. We're all in it together on this pale blue dot. Can you summarize it? Matter as it isn't in its full resting state, and a little surge of energy could shift it enough to completely change chemistry and physics in our universe. It's been theorized that there are already these vacuum bubbles in space, racing out at the speed, or faster, of light. It's basically death in God mode. Story 4. Rogue planets. Planets that do not follow any given orbit. They may have been in an orbit at one time, but now they refuse to play by the rules. They are most likely knocked out of their orbit by another body, and now they are set on doing the same. Here's some comments from underneath. There's a strangely artistic movie called Melancholia that has such a planet. That part of it is disturbing. Is it the Lars von Trier film that Mike Stokalasa likes to reference? Astronomers here. Fun fact, back in the 90s, searching for rogue planets was huge, because some wondered if dark matter could be just a bunch of rogue planets between the galaxies, or similar. They were called machos. The searches involved looking for small amounts of gravitational lensing that would cause with the satellite galaxies of the Milky Way. And they found some. Excitement. But then they never found anywhere near enough to explain the effects of dark matter that we see in the galaxy. As a result, we still don't know what dark matter is beyond a strange particle. But we do actually know the number of rogue planets out there surprisingly well. Story 5. This visual shows how slow light speed is, or how vast space is. depending on which way you look at it. I've seen videos showing the scale of the universe before, but this one really hit home for some reason. The speed of light, the fastest speed possible, looks painfully slow when you look at it in the context of even a fraction of our solar system. We're stuck here, aren't we? And here are some comments from underneath. Some stars are even bigger than the distance between Mars and us. Imagine it takes light some time to travel the object producing it. It's crazy. Even crazier is that the photons hitting Earth today are likely hundreds of thousands of years old. It takes them a very long time to make it out of the sun while bumping into stuff. This video makes me feel dead inside. Deep space stuff always scares me because, WTF is going on here? How can something make me so upset I cry when I am just on a rock, hurtling through nothingness? Why would I even exist? How can I be munching on hummus at 2:59 surrounded by unimaginable stretches of pure void? And writing about it with a phone? WTF. Story 6. What was before the Big Bang? I think it is just impossible for a human to comprehend pure nothing or infinity. I myself had a stroke at age 9 due to a ruptured vertebral artery and lost a third of my visual field. I can confirm that it is not black. A good analogy is it is like what you see behind your head. On the other hand, infinity is so large that if you spent your whole life writing a 1, then zeros on paper, that insane number would still be 0% of infinity. I just think there is no way to fully understand the universe, and there never will be. This is why even ancient societies explain things with gods, because they didn't understand how the reality we live in started. And I don't think we ever will. And here are 2 comments from underneath. Since time began at the Big Bang, the term before is meaningless. But before that, I hate the concept of time-space irrelevancy. Sure, there technically wasn't, but there also technically was. Just because there's nothing for reference doesn't mean there was nothing. Somebody much smarter is bound to come around and correct me, but I've just accepted that time-space is no beginning. The Big Bang is something that I've personally thought about a lot, especially considering the way I was brought up, and then what I have learned in school. I think all sides of the argument are really interesting, as most of them start with either nothing there, or some being who has been there since the beginning of time. Either way, it begs the question, what created the first anything? I don't know. I just think it's a really interesting concept. Story 7. Here's one closer to home. The Kessler Effect is the theory that a single destructive event in low Earth orbit could create a cascade where satellites break up into tiny fragments, taking out other satellites, breaking up into smaller fragments, and so on, until the Earth is completely surrounded by a massive cloud of tiny flying death shrapnel, which would make leaving this planet almost impossible. If you look up how much space debris there is already up there and how many satellites currently orbit, plus the continued growth of the commercial space industry, I think about it a lot. Here are 2 comments from underneath. You should read Seven Eves. It could get worse. Seven Eves takes it to the extreme. Great book. The concept is also explored on a much smaller scale in Peter F. Hamilton's Fallen Dragon. It's not even one of the main points of the story, but basically a planet purposely creates a Seven Eves-like event using an asteroid, meaning that while they can't leave for thousands of years, no one else will be able to get in either. Story 8. Since the universe is expanding and stars and galaxies are moving away from each other, it's possible that civilizations that spring up in the far future with lonely stars will see an empty sky. Their civilizations will grow and learn, but they will never know the universe that once was. We live in a spectacular time period where we can actually look back in time and see the early universe. Future civilizations won't have that luxury. They'll believe that the universe is, and already was, dark, dead, and empty, aside from their small island of light. And here are 3 comments from underneath. With that in mind, you have to wonder what stellar phenomena may have populated the universe billions of years ago, but are now too far away for us to ever detect. Thank you for the existential crisis. Galaxies are gravitationally bound structures. They aren't expanding like the universe is. So future civilizations may live in isolated galaxies, but their night sky will still have other stars. Story 9. Gamma ray burst. We could be hit by one of these with very little warning, and if it was reasonably close, in universal terms anyway, could wipe us out rapidly or cause a ton of damage. Dark matter or dark energy. The fact that about 95% of the universe is made up of matter we can't see or detect is pretty unsettling to think about. Also, while not a fact per se, I like to think that perhaps the answer to the Fermi paradox is that there are billions of advanced alien life forms out there, but they are physically unable to reach us due to technological limitations. Perhaps interstellar transport is only theoretical, and any aliens capable of reaching us are unable to do so in an acceptable length of time. Proxima Centauri may take 25 years for unmanned spacecraft to reach us, going 20% the speed of light. But perhaps it's impossible to transport actual life at these speeds without dying. So advanced civilizations have realized the futility of trying to contact other species and have simply given up. And here's a comment. Been searching for a comment saying gamma ray burst. I remember when I was taught about them, I was going to show myself, LMAO. Story 10. Mobile black holes. And here's some comments. Say one heading straight towards us was discovered, we'd be completely effed, right? Very little we could do. To put it in perspective, it's exactly the kind of thing we'll never know about. Because if there was one heading straight toward us, we would be so unequivocally effed, the absolute best case scenario is to just engage in global information suppression and murder anyone who finds out, so that the rest of the population doesn't descend into whatever chaos, realizing we're all gonna die, and there's nothing that can be done to stop it would occur. I think the only thing we could do is literally move the planet and or solar system out of its way. That's the most realistic thing we could do. Okay, this feels like the movie Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio and Jennifer Lawrence, where there are two scientists who discover an asteroid heading for Earth, and the government immediately tries to shut them down when they try to spread the news. I highly recommend the movie if you're a big conspiracy theorist or just need a funny movie that also makes you question reality. Story 11. The Great Attractor. A thing that affects the motion of galaxies for hundreds of millions of light years. And here's some comments explaining. It's thought to be just a bigger bunch of galaxies. I went to Google to see if there was a formal name for a cluster of galaxies. Supercluster was what I got. I was gonna mention this, but while researching some specifics on it, I found that subsequent studies discovered the Great Attractor is not what we originally thought. One study found that the Great Attractor is 1/10 the mass originally attributed to it. Another study found that the Milky Way is actually being pulled towards a massive galactic cluster that lies beyond the Great Attractor region. Story 12. The Boots Void. An area of space where there should be 50,000 or so galaxies compared to other areas of the same size, but there's only about 60. Could just be empty space for some unknown reason, or it could be an ever-expanding intergalactic empire using Dyson spheres. Also, I think it appears to be growing, but that could just be galaxies moving away from the void. And then here's some comments. If the Milky Way had been in the center of the Boots Void, we wouldn't have known there were other galaxies until the 1960s, said Greg Aldering, an astronomer. Wow, that's crazy. Galactic deforestation. They had to make room to feed the space cows. Story 13. I think everything is terrifying about space, but one thing it scares me a lot, if it's in space, is infinite. Imagine what kind of gigantic monster can be in there. And here's a comment. My favorite debate I've ever had with a friend is about gigantic space monsters. I argued that since space is infinite and we don't understand much about it, that there's a good chance that there's a gigantic space monster that's just a massive head that eats planets to live. We went back and forth for like 15 minutes. Story 14. A fact from a show I used to like. The main problem in space is pressure. There isn't any. So don't hold your breath or your lungs will explode. Blood vessels rupture, exposed areas swell. Fun fact, the boiling temperature of water is much lower in a vacuum, which means that your sweat and your saliva will boil, as well as the fluid around your eyes. You won't notice any of this because 15 seconds in, you've passed out as oxygen bubbles formed in your blood. And 90 seconds in, you're dead. Well, isn't that a delightful little tidbit of information? Although, I guess it's nice to understand why that kind of stuff happens, because I always wondered, was it just simply the lack of oxygen? But hey, I guess you learn something new every day. Story 15. The fact that an asteroid could come at any time. And even though we have the technology to tell us that an asteroid is about to impact Earth, what can we really do about it? Nothing. We can do nothing. We can just sit here with the media stations telling us what will happen, telling our friends and loved ones goodbye, praying, etc. It sucks. Why do we have the technology that tells us our inevitable doom is days or even moments away, but no technology to possibly stop it? Story 16. There is no guarantee that the universe won't end in the next 10 seconds. And update, it didn't. Update, it did. I think there's also a theory that there's no guarantee the universe wasn't just spontaneously created 10 seconds ago, and that all our memories were created with it 10 seconds ago. Story 17. I can't accept the fact that there is no end in space. But if there is indeed an end, then what's beyond it? I'm stuck in absurdity. Here's 2 comments. At the end, there's either infinity or nothingness. And what the hell is my little brain supposed to do with that? I know, right? Our brains have no way to comprehend it. Like, I tried to, but my brain is like, nah. Story 18. Not scary exactly, more unfortunate, if anything, but we'll probably never be able to properly communicate with alien species. Given the amount of distance between the planets of our solar system, I'd assume the distance to other universes and galaxies is too far to think about right now. If we receive and send a message right now, by the time we hear a reply back, we would probably be in a completely different government and societal system. We would just be constantly introducing ourselves. Yeah, I think unless a group of aliens actually just showed up here one day, there is no way any of us will know about extraterrestrial life during this lifetime. Even if we did make contact, it would just be like the worst meet cute ever, since it would take another 50 years to get a message back. Story 19. Ever gone on a road trip and hit a patch where you're just driving for hours and you don't see anything exciting? I've experienced this in Australia, Canada, and the USA. All very large countries. Imagine doing that for years traveling to another planet, only to find out that due to a small rounding area, your ship is 1/100th of a degree off and you're centuries off course. Story 20. Voyager 1 will outlive planet Earth. Here's 2 comments. Who knows how long that thing will last? Maybe it'll never be found and live for eons until its atoms begin to decay. My CMDR in Elite Dangerous is actually gonna go check it out. You can actually find it roughly where it would be in the year 3306. Story 21. On the surface of Mars right now is Blur CD. God help us if aliens find that first. I need to answer this, and it is vitally important. What Blur CD? Beagle 2 crash-landed with a Blur album saved on board its computer. The intent was to broadcast the music playing from the surface of Mars. Story 22. The coldest place in the universe is not the Boomerang Nebula, or even in space. No, it's the inside of a D-Wave quantum computer at 15 MK. Coldness in space is so funky because there's a limit. Like, we know how cold the coldest thing can be. There's nothing in all of existence colder than the absolute zero. Nothing. Story 23. It's bigger than anyone could ever hope to comprehend. And here's a comment. It scares me how insignificant we are. We can all just die out and the universe wouldn't care. Yet we keep arguing if it's so bad to have relationships with a person with the same body parts or different skin color, like life matters on it. Story 24. Humans exist within a time frame of Earth's life where the moon is just at the right distance that we have solar and lunar eclipses the way we do now. The coincidence is just a little too uncanny for my taste. But it also shows how things can just majestically turn out the way they do out of pure chance. This is actually something that's really cool when you put the Earth into perspective. We just so happen to be the perfect distance from the sun to sustain our life forms, as well as having the perfect amount of gravity. If things were even slightly different, life would not exist on Earth, and you wouldn't be watching this video. Story 25. There is literally no end to the universe. No matter how long we study it, there will always be stuff that we will never know just because of the vastness of space. There could also be multiple universes, which is unbelievable considering that we know so little about our own. Story 26. A few people have said this, but just the size of space is creepy to me. That far away. But what almost oppresses me more is that unlike in Stargate, I will never be able to travel to any of it. Would love to see what's out there. Story 27. Heat death. That one keeps me up at night. Somebody commented, take your socks off. Story 28. The moon's haunted. Story 29. That we might actually be alone in the universe. Or the They're Made of Meat short story. Story 30. That the Milky Way galaxy has an estimated 10 million black holes. Please leave your story in the comments. I would love to make a video on them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.